Hello. Okay, guys, hopefully all this works. All right. All righty. So this is the quiz review. The quiz will be Friday, and it's not yet published. You won't be able to see it until Thursday. Source 1 for the quiz. Make sure this is sharing like it's supposed to. Okay. Source 1 says, under the Constitution, then, the breadth of the right to vote for both state and national elections was fixed by state law. And at the time of ratification, to ratify means to sign, this meant that many people, including most women, African Americans, Native Americans, and white men whom did not own property, could not vote. The person who said this was Grant Hayden, a Hofstra University law professor. So what he's talking about was when the Constitution was signed in 1776. People who could not vote were most women, African Americans, Native Americans, and white men who did not vote. White men who did not own property. Okay, that's your source 1, right? So let's go to page 5 of your quiz. Let me scroll down. Friday, March 26 quiz, Unit 3, Part B, page 5. Let's get to the right question. I shrank it, of course. Based on source 1, according to Professor Hayden's statement, who could vote under the Constitution as it was written in 1776? White men, women, African Americans, or white men who own property? Okay, so according to Professor Hayden, women could not vote. African Americans could not vote. Now, he said something about white men whom did not own property could not vote. So we can't just say white men, because white men without property could not vote. So the people who could vote was D, white men who own property. If you mark A, it's wrong. So A, B, and C are all incorrect answers. It's D. Number 1 is D. Number 2 wants us to go to source 2. So that means we got to go back to assignments. I don't know if you can hear my music going. I've got 2 little boys who are running up and down the hallway, so I have some music to calm me. So Friday, March 26th quiz, Unit 3, Part B, page 2. So that's going to be our source 2. Must shrink the page. Right. This is an image taken from Mineola, Texas. I'm going to look up my phone using my Waze app. See how far away Mineola, Texas is from where I'm sitting right now. No, I'm not going anywhere right now. In Keithville. So Mineola, Texas is 100 miles from where we are right now. So 99.7 miles from where I'm sitting in Keithville. That would take an hour and 49 minutes to drive. Okay, so that's not that far away from where we are. Okay, so this image right here, this says pay your poll tax now. Comes from Mineola, Texas. So that is 100 miles away from where I'm currently sitting in Keithville Elementary Middle School. So this is a sign reminding citizens of Mineola, Texas to pay their poll tax. Pay your poll tax now. Deadline, January 31st. Vote and protect your rights and privileges. Be ready for every election. Local option and other special elections are in prospect this year. So people used to have to pay a poll tax in order to vote. Okay. So let's go back to page 5 of the quiz. Based on source 2, what was the main purpose for implementing poll taxes? A, to control who won the election. B, to stop African Americans from voting. C, to stop women from voting. Or D, to allow all citizens the right to vote. Okay, think about what we talked about before we went to spring break. We talked about poll taxes. That was one of the discriminatory things that were implemented to keep African Americans from voting. So number 2 is B. B as in boy. Number 3 is asking about source 3. So we need to go to unit 3, source B, page 3. And shrink the page. Okay, this is going to deal with the 15th and 19th Amendment. I know all my friends know that I had this up in my classroom, a poster. It will still be here when you take the test. 15th Amendment, the right of citizens to vote shall not be denied or abridged. To abridge means to change. By the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So 15th has to do with giving African Americans, including people that were previously enslaved, the right to vote. The 19th Amendment, which we will be talking about in class Wednesday, says the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. What that means is women, they're talking about gender, women with the 19th Amendment got the right to vote. That is the women's suffrage amendment. Okay. 15th Amendment, African Americans, no matter if they're previously enslaved or not, got the right to vote. 19th Amendment, women finally got the right to vote. That was in the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So that's your source 3. Okay. So number 3 says, based on source 3, who gained voting rights with the passing of the 15th and 19th Amendments? Select 2 that apply. So the 15th Amendment gave African Americans the right to vote. So A is the first correct answer for number 5. I'm sorry, for number 3. Page 5. And 19th, it was women getting the right to vote. So D. Number 3 is A and D. If you don't get both of those correct, then your whole answer is wrong. A and D. Let's go to page 4. Okay. President Lyndon B. Johnson signing the Voting Rights Act into law. This is source 4. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson, was aimed to overcome legal barriers at the state and local levels that prevented African Americans from voting. The act banned the use of literacy tests and the use of poll taxes in state and local elections. If you guys recall, before we went out to spring break, oh, so glorious spring break that was for all of us, I'm sure. We took, was it 4 questions of a literacy test. And you guys should recall, there wasn't that much about literacy to that test. It was more of a trick test, wasn't it? So the Voting Rights Act of 1965, it banned the use of literacy tests, and it banned the use of poll taxes in state and local elections. So you cannot use those anymore. Okay. So now we go to page 6 to answer question number 4. Okay, based on source 4, what was the main impact the signing of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 had on the voting rights of the United States citizens? A, it allowed poor people the right to vote without any instructions. B, it allowed women the right to vote without any instructions. C, it allowed African Americans the right to vote without any instructions. Or D, it allowed Native Americans the right to vote without any instructions. Yes, it allowed poor people the right to vote without any instructions. But the main impact, and that's the word that's in bold, is C. It allowed African Americans the right to vote without any obstructions. So 4, the main impact is C. That's the correct answer, is C. Number 5, based on the sources and your knowledge of social studies, describe 2 ways voting rights for citizens have changed throughout the history of the United States. All right, this big and bold for my friends. Okay. 1776. Oh, that isn't so far from inappropriate size. All right, it's much larger for you guys. In 1776, only white men who owned land could vote. With the passing of the 15th Amendment, all men including African American men could vote. In the 1920s, the 19th Amendment was passed, and finally, women were allowed to vote. I'm going to give even more information. In the 1960s, voting rights were declared civil rights, and no citizen was denied a vote. Okay, so the question said give 2 ways voting rights for citizens changed throughout the history of the United States. I gave you more than 2. Okay, you have a lot of information there. Okay, I only need 2 from you. So I need you to tell me what it started with, and then I need you to tell me 2 changes. So you need to tell me in 1776 what it was. And that was that only white men who own land could vote. Okay. And then you need to tell me what allowed it to change and how did it change. All right. If you want to mention, sorry, one of my plugs is getting bent. If you want to mention when Native Americans were given the right to vote, because we're going to discuss that in class Thursday, and that's 1947, be my guest. That's not actually listed on a poster on the wall. That's why I didn't mention it. The 15th Amendment is listed on the wall. The 19th Amendment is listed on the wall. That's why I specifically listed those 2. I mentioned the voting rights being civil rights because that has to do with the civil rights movement. And we've been talking about that since before we went to spring break. Excuse me for a moment. Clearly, our voting rights in the United States have changed since our country was started. Okay. All right. So we've done pages 4, 5. So we need to go to page 7. Sorry, I'm talking out loud to myself. Sure, we're getting older. You forget things quickly. So these are discrete items. In other words, they give you a source and then the question is right below it. Okay, so this is a table. 1, freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, petition. 2, right to keep and bear arms in order to maintain a well-regulated militia. 3, no quartering of soldiers. 4, freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures. 5, right to due process of law, freedom from self-incrimination and double jeopardy. 6, right of accused person, for example, right to a speedy and public trial. 7, right of trial by jury in civil cases. 8, freedom from excessive bail, cruel and unusual punishments. 9, other rights of the people. 10, powers reserved for the states. So the question that goes with it. Number 6, which of the following would best complete the title of this table? Okay, is it responsibilities of all citizens, actions to solve community issues, qualities of a good citizen, or rights given to all citizens? So if you recognize these are amendments 1 through 10. They're also called the Bill of Rights. These are rights of all U.S. citizens. So this is D, rights given to all citizens. Okay, 6 is D. Okay. Let's go to page 8. 14th Amendment. I'm going to read it again. No state may abridge the privileges and immunities of any of its citizens or deny them due process of law or equal protection of the laws. That was section 1. Section 2, when any state denies the right to vote at any election to any of its male citizens of voting age, its representatives in elections for, I think this is outlined. So it's asking, what rights and privileges do the 14th Amendment protect? Select 2 that apply. Just like with number 3, you have to give both correct answers or the whole question is wrong. A, it allowed separate but equal facilities for African Americans. B, it gave freedom to enslaved African Americans. C, all people are born in the United States are considered citizens. D, it gave voting rights to all citizens. E, everyone had equal protection under the law. Okay, as a reminder, what I'm looking up at is my big poster of the amendments. Okay, 14th Amendment. One of these answers is directly on my poster. The other one, you're gonna have to just remember. Or you know the fact that it's written right here. So your first answer is C. All people born in the United States are considered citizens. Okay. Communities of any of its citizens. And it's written up on a poster, 14th Amendment, citizenship. Okay. Letter E says everyone has equal protection under the law. Equal protection of the laws. So 7 is C and E. Number 8, a period in United States history in which African Americans participated in organized marches, sit-ins, and boycotts is known as. Now, think about what we've discussed. We talked about it before we went to break. We talked about it Monday, which is today. We talked about it Tuesday, which will be tomorrow, but you guys have probably already discussed it before you see this video. We haven't been talking about American Revolution this week. We haven't been talking about Civil War this week. We have talked about voting rights, but that's not the bigger picture of what we've been talking about. We have been talking about the civil rights movement. Okay. Number 8 is the civil rights movement. Okay. Period in American history in which African Americans participated in organized marches, sit-ins, and boycotts is known as the civil rights movement. Okay, guys, it's the civil rights movement. Why is the next button missing? No rhyme or reason for why the next button disappears. There one moment, gone the next. Okay, Friday, page 9. Okay, number 9. Martin Luther King Jr. was the leader of the civil rights movement in the United States. What impact did the civil rights movement have on the culture of the United States? A, African Americans are allowed to vote. B, citizens of the United States have incorporated African American culture into the everyday lives. C, the civil rights movement gave equal rights to all citizens of the United States. D, land owned by the colonies doubled in size. Okay, that has nothing to do with culture. The question says MLK was the leader of the civil rights movement. Yes, we already know that. What impact did the civil rights movement have on the culture of the United States? Okay, African Americans are allowed to vote. Yes. This question, this choice mentions culture. It's the only choice that mentions culture. So don't you think that would be your only reasonable answer? I'm thinking it is. And it happens to be the right answer. So Martin Luther King was the leader of the civil rights movement in the United States. What impact did the civil rights movement have on the culture of the United States? Citizens incorporated African American culture into their everyday lives. We're actually not going to discuss African American culture because it was a whole nother day, 4 more sources of information. And it kind of would take us off track. It's not introduced as culture, it's introduced in another way. So just take my word for it. Number 9 is B. We good with that? Without having to go through 4 more sources. Can you trust me on this one? African American culture was incorporated through the civil rights movement into United States culture. Okay. All right. So now we're going to page 10. Last page of this quiz. Okay. This is another lesson where I kind of skipped 2 lessons, but I think this one of these is intuitive. You should be able to get this without having to go through the actual lesson. A good citizen obeys laws and respects authority, is responsible, is trustworthy and honest, contributes to the community, respects the rights of others, learns about what's going on in the world. So which statement best describes the chart? Chart describes the responsibilities people have as a good citizen, the rights people have as a good citizen, the duties people have as a good citizen, or how people should vote as a good citizen. This is not to do with how they're voting. These are not their rights. We didn't really talk about duties. We talked about rights and responsibilities. Word responsible is in that. So I'm thinking the best fit is A. Okay, so number 10, it's A. Describes people's responsibilities as good citizens. So 10 is A. All right, guys. That is the end of your quiz. Your quiz is worth 11 points. All right.